Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Welcome all.
So this episode is on something that's really riveting. I can't say more about how interesting it could possibly be.
Of all the podcasts we've done, this is the one that will be the most.
You'll be on the edge of your seat the entire time. Yeah. What are we talking about, Doc?
You said it. Documentation.
Ooh.
Putting the doc in documentation.
That's it is a class that we've done in person, on demand, online. It actually is a semi-popular one, even though the subject matter is fairly dry.
Because the bottom line is, it is more important now than ever. Maybe to give you just a quick historical, why a chiropractor is so terrible with documentation, and why is it even bleeding over into the younger generation? But in the old days, when chiropractic in many states wasn't even licensed, like, for example, in Massachusetts, we were the third to the last state to license chiropractic. So a lot of times what would happen is chiropractors were practicing medicine, quote, illegally. And so a lot of times they didn't want any evidence of the fact that they were practicing chiropractic. So their whole record-keeping system was kept in an index box. And it comprised mostly of dates, maybe a level or two of what was adjusted and what was paid. So it was really that simple, so that when somebody would say, oh my God, the police are coming to raid you, they could grab that one box of index cards and hide it. So
you're speaking from firsthand experience here, right?
Not quite, though I did work for a doc that did have that exact experience. Yeah. So there's always been this resistance and this slow, tedious, painful progression to accept the fact that documentation is required, necessary, and in the world today needed.
Well, let's face it. I mean, documentation has become more robust. I think one of the engines behind this is third-party carriers, right? Wanting this constant and ever-evolving, deepening justification for paying for a service.
Yeah, and let's face it, they go too far. But in broad strokes, generally speaking, they're just asking for, the fact that you saw this patient, you tell me what's wrong with them, you tell me what you're going to do about them, you tell me how it turns out, you send me a bill for reasonable medically necessary services, and we can go on and on and on and on about the definition of medical necessity by a carrier's position or perspective. But for the most part, it's practical. If I were to ask you to write me a check every time you came into my office as a chiropractor, or say you were paying for someone you cared about to go see a chiropractor, you would definitely want to know why that costs this and why that costs that, and how many times you're going to do a hut pack before you tell me to just do it at home and not charge me the $20 for the hut pack or things like that. So the scrutiny isn't wrong. It's the fact that they've gone to the point where it's no longer practical. One of the sayings is, you don't have to document that you documented what you previously documented. And that seems like where we are today.
Well, honestly, from the claims perspective side of it, the pain point I see often is these carriers, the documentation's never good enough. It doesn't satisfy this, that, or it doesn't matter how long the documentation could be, how deep in depth in the weeds you get about the clinical. They're always, I'm not going to say always, most of the time, there's deficiencies, and then they'll tell you what a deficiency is, and then you resubmit or you submit another, you go into the detail of where they thought you fell short, and then all of a sudden there's another reason. It's like, why didn't you tell me that already?
Yeah, because we know the real intent. The real intent is to find excuses to not pay, even though their outward statements may be that they just want to know everything I just told you.
But those commercials seem so warm and friendly.
I know, and they have the nice
they
pretty
care and they love.
Walking through the flower fields and everything. I love it.
We're getting off course here.
I know. So why do we document? Why even bother? I mean, I need to know what I need to know to do what I do. Why do I have to document?
Well, when I look at how much they reimburse, it hardly seems fair how much they ask you to document, to be honest.
Yeah. Please write me the Great American Novel and I'll give you $20.
Like a travel card should suffice based on your reimbursement.
and in the old days, that really worked, right? I mean, in the past, less was more. Now, less is less.
Especially from the malpractice defense work that you do mostly, right? I mean,
I will quote one of my favorite movies, The 10 Commandments. So shall it be written, so shall it be done. That's just the way it is.
Where's the bump, the music?
I can't say it as well as, as the actors in there. My voice is nowhere near that deep, but so shall it be written.
So shall it be written.
So shall it be done. And the bottom line is, if it isn't written, it didn't happen.
I would go so far as to say, if you can't read it, it wasn't written. It didn't happen.
Exactly. I mean, before, the notes really were for us. So my little scribbles and my little abbreviations and my shorthand was good enough because I needed to know what I was doing. Now someone else needs to know what you're doing. That's the bottom line. Someone else needs to know about what you're doing, why you're doing it. Maybe it has to go to another doctor. So there's a need for continuity of care. So that other doctor would have to read the notes. We integrate our practices more than ever with other professions, which we're going to do a podcast on integrated practice. But we integrate our practices with other professions. And so now our notes supposed to mean something. So we're being reviewed over and over and over again. So now all of a sudden the reviewer commonly uses as an excuse, either I can't read it, or the notes are incomplete, or they're not good enough, or whatever. So the bottom line is, as a business decision, not just clinical, but as a business decision, you need to have good notes.
Who do you think documents better, the fresh graduate or the seasoned veteran?
I'm going to answer that in a convoluted way.
Oh, big shocker there.
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. The newer practitioner knows better. Do they do better? Not necessarily. It's not as clean cut as you might think. The bottom line is I graduated in 1981. Go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
I graduated. Think back.
Yeah. I know you were in diapers.
I was like 8 years old, I think.
But I was taught how to document in 1981. I mean, there was this
travel cards were probably on the table back then.
They were, but the need to document was still real. And the information that we were asked to document as students existed.
But
so
Doc,
it's not a new concept.
That was in school clinic. Of course, you had to document in the school clinic, right? Yeah.
There's all these parts of the national board, and I always think there's this unstated part of the national board that says you take a test now to forget everything you learned.
That's every profession when you go to school.
Exactly. Exactly. We also have risk management issues and things like that. So documentation is real. Kind of get on board, put on the big boy and big girl pants, if you want to put it that way. And it's real. You can't avoid it.
So let's get into the weeds a little bit here, because I'm looking at it this way. Oftentimes someone will say, well, that was an auto record, or that was a Medicare record. That was a work comp. Oh, that was just a Blue Cross record. Oh, that's just a cash person. I don't know what's going on. Is there something going on in the building?
If this was a video, you'd see my face getting redder and redder and redder each time.
Right? Is there such thing as these distinct financial classes of documentation?
Well, just to make it clear, there are two formats of records. You can have an E&M, which they define their sections as history, exam, diagnosis, and plan of care. And you can have a daily note where they define almost the exact same sections, but they define them as subjective, objective assessment and plan, the SOAP note. But when it comes to the record, a note is a note is a note. If somebody's telling you, oh, this is a cash note, you don't have to have as good a note as you have as for an insurance note, run away from that person as fast as you possibly can. The only difference between a personal injury note and a self-pay note is volume. Just volume of the information in each section. But each section and the type of information and what's required, all the same.
So what you're really saying is you wouldn't omit portions of required documentation based on the category of financial class.
Absolutely. Get it out of your head that the records are just a necessity to get a carrier to pay you. It's your risk management. It's your patient care. It's everything outside of being paid. It has everything to do with the concepts of risk management and compliance.
To put a fine point on the importance of what's actually inside the note, do you ever, when you're reviewing some defense medical malpractice work, do you ever just say to yourself, boy, if this doctor had just written this?
Oh, constantly. And I'll even go so far as to say if they just simply read their own note, they would see how foolish their statements are and how deficient their note is. They don't even read it. Half the time the note in one section contradicts the other section because they're just salting over, same as last treatment, salting over the note one after the other and never even looking at them. Part of compliance is to review your records. Half the time I tell the people, if I ask you to read the note and you do your own self-audit, I guarantee you're going to see 90% of what I see. You just don't spend the time to do that. So it's ridiculous sometimes. And I know, don't get me wrong, I get that this is a burden to our life. I think it was 5 years ago, the Federation of Chiropractic Licensing Board, maybe even more than that now with COVID, time just flies. But they said that 25% of our time will be spent documenting. So if you were to translate that into how many patients you were able to see in a day, you're basically saying I have to see 25% less or I have to add 25% more time. But that's just the reality of today, and we can't do without it. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with this added burden? And I will say burden because sometimes you do end up reporting way more than really in the chiropractic sense you need to.
And chiropractors are not alone with this burden of documentation. Every profession, if you've seen what physical therapists have to document, especially for Medicare, forget about it.
I always say, whenever you start complaining about documentation, let us tell you what a physical therapist has to do.
Yeah.
And then their answer always, they get paid better than us.
They do.
Well, they do.
Mostly, not all the time.
But they also spend 3 times the amount of time documenting that we do.
I think that some of their software is better too, though. Some of their documentation software I've seen is much more robust.
Well, half the softwares out there accommodate bad record taking.
But this relates back to a couple other podcasts we did. Physical therapists often treat similarly. So therefore, their software can be more standardized.
Exactly. And definitely, there's differences between what we do for sure. But, some of the things we can do is add a scribe. We're fans of scribes.
Yeah, we get a lot of pushback on this because rightly so. The question is, well, how do I afford a scribe? And then I say to myself, well, what's your average per patient visit collected? Okay. And let's just say that average is $50, just for round up
discussion.
Right. And let's say you take more than half of that off for overhead. Whatever you're paying that scribe is probably going to be same or less than that per hour. So if you can see one more patient per hour, you've now paid for your scribe.
Times as many hours a day, times as many days a week, times as many weeks in a month. And blah,
so
blah.
I dare say you could probably see more than one more patient per hour if you had a scribe. But your quality of life, even if you couldn't and you broke even, your quality of life professionally, I think, would increase because you're not stuck behind the computer all day, all night.
And it forces you to be aware of what you're doing. And then a good scribe will monitor the notes and will make sure that they're complete before they leave. Even without a scribe, with electronic records today, if you're spending 4-5 minutes on an exam note, an initial exam note, that's a long time. If you're spending more than a minute on a daily note, and really 30 seconds to 45 seconds, that's a long time. But if you tell me 30 seconds is too long,
maybe you've got a really tight macro,
Yeah, you might have to smell the roses here. That, the goal isn't to create a quick bad note. The goal is to create a quick good note. And somebody says, oh, well, I can take this software and I can do it in half the time. I said, well, I can take the good software and do the same lousy note in half the time.
Right.
So it's, you have to recognize that there is a requirement here. And if you think 30 seconds is too long for an active treatment daily note, you might have to have a come to God meeting here.
Look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Well, I think some people might be, oh, I can't believe this. It takes longer than that. But it will in the beginning. You have to invest some time and energy into refining your macros so it satisfies documentation, but also how you practice, right?
And learn your software. Oh my God, how many times do you talk to somebody and you ask them to walk you through a note and they can't even navigate the software effectively? So what you end up doing is getting lazy. You just keep salting over. And then you got 20 visits of the exact same note. And then when they ask for the notes and they want a clawback or they want to deny payment, you get all upset. It's like, well, you didn't say anything. It's important to recognize.
Or you say, well, there was more going on with this patient, but it's not written anywhere.
If I have to ask a question about your note and you have to give me answers that require information not in a note, then it's not a good note. So, safeguards, very simple. Generate them contemporaneously. Yes. Oh my God. Well, that may slow me down. Well, it will and it won't. When you add up the time you put into note taking, if you're doing them properly, it doesn't slow you down. So number one mortal sin of documentation is batch note. Do not do batch notes. You say, oh, I'm going to do them at the end of the morning, or I'll do them at the end of the day, or I'll even do them the next day or whatever. And I sit there and I have like 20, 30, 40 notes I have to do all in one batch. And the first note doesn't look all that bad. By the time you get to the last note, it's got like 4 words in it because you're just so tired of doing it. And then you say, but I remember
everything.
And I can tell you that I've been in court many times when somebody tries to say that. And it takes literally 3 minutes before the attorney just blows that whole concept away. They simply ask you what you had for breakfast that morning and they can't remember. And now you're trying to make it sound like you can remember. I know exactly what I did to the 20 patients that I saw this morning or the 30 patients I saw. So
because it was exactly the same thing.
Just look at the last note. Whatever I did is what I did in the last note. So there is no such thing as good batch notes ever, period.
I wonder how you feel about that.
Really I know.
Mystery. Stop walking the edge there. Yeah. Just tell us how you feel, right?
Be careful of 2 versions, too. A lot of people have like worksheets, and then they'll go in and create the electronic note, and then all of a sudden the electronic note doesn't match the worksheet note.
Yeah. Right. If you use a paper aid like that, that's fine. But typically it's not going to be all the information probably anyway.
No. And make sure you include your metrics. We always talk about this, that there's such a thing as, if I say patient has hypertonicity and I say that 20 times in a row and I don't have a metric attached, how are people going to know who are reviewing my notes know that something's getting better? If it starts out severe hypertonicity, ends up being mild hypertonicity, at least it shows a progression. But all this better, worse, better, worse, I have no idea what's going on with the patient because the first time I have a worse and then the next one is a better, are they as good as they were before they went worse or just improved from when they were worse to now better? It's just ridiculous note-taking. Better, worse, better, worse.
And then it makes me think about, again, from the billing side, sometimes I'll see a note or notes and then like halfway through care, I'm like, well, where did this diagnosis come from? It just shows up. There's nothing in the note that really explains this new condition.
Oh, it's like doing re-exams, and all of a sudden they do a whole set of a different set of exam procedures than they did on the initial. It's like, well, how come you're not redoing all the positives from the initial? Because again, nobody is following their own notes. So they go in there and all of a sudden the re-exam is what they want to do that day. They don't bother to look at what they did before. And when you're asking someone else to read this story of your note, the beginning, the middle, and the end of this story, and all of a sudden there's no middle, and you're trying to put it all together and then ask them to give you money for it. Think about it. You wouldn't do it either.
Right. And you're not helping someone like me on the claim side of things at all when it comes to trying to get reimbursement. And I think the prospective payment system has certainly helped create some of the laxity in care when it comes to note taking, because nobody asks for every single note on every single patient every single time. Because if they did,
Slow the whole process. Yeah.
and why would you want to feel that panic when you get an audit request?
And I know you're all out there thinking, my problem's going to be solved with AI.
Well,
and maybe eventually it might, but listen to our podcast on AI, because we're not there yet.
Right.
And we're not going to be there for a while. So AI may be the future, but right now it's not the present.
it's gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be great for a while until you realize you too can be replaced.
You too can be replaced.
Right? Exactly.
So here we are in our member moment, right?
So have you ever, doctors, read the notes that you produce? Just,
Excuse me?
just take I
Read
know you
'em?
sign them that says you read them, but I'd be curious if you were to take a note from like 2 months ago, or notes from a patient, and just read through them with continuity to see what you think of your own note.
Well, if I had the note in front of me, I could explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. So remember, somebody else has to read these to make it make sense. And we'll leave you with this closing thought.
Oh,
Dance like nobody is watching. Document as if it would be read by a jury.
you are a romantic, Mark. I tell you. Woo. Okay, with that, thank you again for joining us for another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.